Yeah,
No
man.
love
What's
for
up? What's up, everybody? How y'all doing today? It's your EsseHomie back at
broken
it again
codes
with another
and
reaction. My bad. Today we're gonna do a Satan Disciples. That's Chicago's violent EBK gang. They's the one who killed their own leader. That's crazy, bro. Even your own people is killing each other, bro. That's crazy. But that's what we're gonna do, man. You already know how we do it, shit, man. Hit that button. Go get your food, your drink, your smoke. Whatever y'all gonna do to watch this reaction, this video, go ahead and do that, bro. I got my Newports ready. I got my Red Bull, and I'm ready, man. But yeah, I haven't been on in a minute. Haven't been putting the reactions out in a minute, but I got some time this week, so that's what I'm gonna do. Try to catch up on my reactions, all right? So without further ado, here's my intro. I'll be right back. Don't go nowhere and hit that subscribe button for your boy. Let's get it.
Get your ass homie.
All right, man. Satan Disciples. Chicago got a crazy gang activities going on over there, man. But whoo, let's get into this shit, guys. You guys know I react to all types of stuff, videos, music videos, this type of documentaries, everything, bro. So let's get into it.
straight up betrayal.
Hit that button, bro. Hit
These
that button.
dudes called themselves EBK, Everybody Killer, and they meant it. No love for outsiders and even less for their own. They took out rivals, sparked wars, and even laid down their own king. So the question is,
No
what
loyalty
made
in the
a
game, man.
flip
To be honest
like
with you,
that?
that's what it seems like.
How did one of the realest sets in the city tear itself apart from the inside? Join us as we take a closer look at the Satan Disciples, who they were, what they did, and break it all down. From Polish pride to street power. The Satan Disciples. Back in the 1940s, Chicago was changing fast. After the Great Depression, thousands of Eastern European families came pouring into the city, hoping to make a better life. Most of them landed manufacturing jobs and found homes along the south branch of the Chicago River. Neighborhoods like Pilsen and Little Village became packed with Polish and Slavic families. By 1948, Pilsen was almost completely Polish. It was tight-knit, proud, and traditional. But the peace didn't last long. In the 1950s, Mexican families began moving into the area. They were also looking for better lives, but the mix of cultures sparked tension. Back then, people weren't used to blending communities. It was common to stick with your own, and many locals didn't like the change. Polish families started moving out to nearby suburbs like Cicero and Oak Park. Meanwhile, Mexican families moved in, filling the homes and streets with new traditions, new language, and a new rhythm. The neighborhood was on edge. It felt like a takeover to some, and for a bunch of young Polish teens, that was enough reason to band together. In 1959, a group of around 12 Polish boys decided to form their own crew. They called themselves the Satan Disciples, or SDs for short.
They were made up by Polish.
The name was meant to scare
Hey, I didn't
people
know
off. They weren't actual devil worshippers. It was all about sending a message. They wanted respect and they wanted protection. The streets were changing, and
That's news to me, bro. I did not know Polish was the real creators of Satan Disciples.
they didn't want to be the ones pushed out. But here's the twist. Right after the SDs set up shop, they realized something unexpected. The Mexican teens in the area didn't want beef. In fact, they thought the Polish gang was cool. Instead of fighting, they asked to join. Within a year, the gang wasn't just Polish anymore, it was half Mexican. That mix changed everything. The Satan Disciples quickly became a united front, a neighborhood brotherhood. It wasn't just about fighting, they came up with rules, real ones. First, of course, was no snitching. That's a rule in almost every gang. But the second rule, that one was different. SDs were encouraged to get jobs, real ones, open a business, become a firefighter, work in a plant. Just don't become a cop. That was the only off-limits path. The goal was to build up the hood while holding it down. It worked, at least for a while. The SDs weren't just a gang. They were a crew of regular working men putting money in the community and watching each other's backs. But there was a catch. Members had to kick up a part of their salary to the top guy, the king. He was elected by the members and had to be smart and fair. Someone who could keep the gang together and handle problems without bringing chaos. For a minute, things were smooth. The structure kept order. But peace doesn't last long in gang life. In 1964, a bigger, bolder gang rolled in from across the tracks. The Latin Kings. These dudes weren't playing defense like the SDs. They were about expansion. Straight up soldiers. They didn't wait for trouble to come to them. They went looking for it.
Lion Kings were not playing even
They'd
back
roll
in
up
them
into
days,
new
huh?
areas, try to snatch up young recruits, and if that didn't work, violence was next. When the Kings set their sights on Pilsen, it was the SD's first big challenge. They stuck to their rule book. They didn't go looking for trouble. Instead, they played defense, holding their ground while the Kings pushed harder. But that move made them look weak to some. One SD member in particular wasn't feeling it. His name was Agapito Villalobos, but on the streets everyone knew him as Big Aggie. He wasn't your average member. While most of the SDs were calm and focused on keeping peace, Big Aggie was a different breed. He was aggressive, fearless, and hungry to prove something. He saw the Latin Kings coming in and said, "Nah, this ain't how we're gonna go out." So he flipped
You
the
want to
script.
put in work.
Instead of holding the line, Aggie went straight into enemy territory. He wasn't waiting on the Kings to make the next move, he made it first. He set up a new SD block deep in Kingland, right on 24th and Washtenaw, in front of his own mom's house. That move was bold, risky, and totally against the original SD code, but it worked. People saw how fearless he was, and little by little, more SDs started rallying around him. He built up a new squad, one that wasn't scared to go on offense. He was flipping the Latin King's own playbook against them. Recruiting, expanding, controlling turf. It wasn't long before his reputation blew up. By 1980, Big Aggie was voted in as King Aggie, the top boss of the Satan disciples. And just like that, everything changed. King Aggie was a street general. First thing he did was toss out the old way. That whole get a job and stay peaceful approach, gone. Aggie wanted power and he wanted money. And to him, that meant one thing, the streets. He told his members to stop chasing paychecks and start chasing profits. Hustling became the new hustle. Slanging dope was the main move. Territory meant everything now. And if you had to fight for it, so be it. Under King Aggie, the Satan disciples expanded fast. They took over more of the south side. They moved into the suburbs. Cicero was theirs now too. It was like a new era had begun. One that wasn't about unity and business anymore, but control and survival. From the outside, the SDs looked more dangerous than ever. But inside, the code was changing. That respect for rules and structure was fading. The line between loyalty and
I don't even think they have rules anymore, huh? Or
and
do they?
As we'll see next, sometimes in the gang world, when you rise too fast or shine too bright, your own people might be the ones to take you down. As the Satan disciples gained more power in Pilsen and beyond, things started to get grimy. They were taking over the city block by block, spreading their name and stretching into new corners of Chicago. But that heat came to a full stop in October 1983. That's when King Aggie, who had built his name off street smarts and fearless moves, got caught up in a robbery case. And it wasn't his first time. This was his second strike, and that meant real time. The court handed him a 12-year sentence in Illinois State Prison. Now, unlike other gangs like the Mexican Mafia, who keep their leaders in power even behind bars, the SDs didn't move like that. Once you were locked up, you were out. So with Aggie gone, they needed someone else to run the show. But here's the twist. Some of the older heads were tired of all the violence and chaos. Members were dropping fast. And that original code, the one that said no senseless beef and encouraged jobs, it was gone. So instead of picking someone like Aggie, the gang flipped the script. They chose someone completely different. A younger member from the same neighborhood, Pilsen.
Wait, I think I heard of this one, bro. They picked a new leader, and then when the old leader came back, he wanted his spot back, but he wasn't getting it. But yeah, I think this is the one.
Who went by the name Gizmo, real name Danny Valencia. Unlike Aggie, Gizmo wasn't about flexing power or pushing war. He wanted to clean up the mess. He hated what his hood had turned into. So the moment he got the crown, he brought back the old ways. Members started working real jobs again. Random hits and attacks on rivals slowed down. For 12 years, Gizmo tried to turn the gang into a real brotherhood again, one that protected its people instead of burying them. But peace never lasts forever on the streets. Fast forward to September 1995, and Aggie was back. After 12 years locked up, the former king returned to Chicago expecting the red carpet. He thought people would salute him, remember his reign, and put him right back in charge. But he came home to a different world. This new generation wasn't riding for him. They were loyal to Gizmo now, the guy who had kept things together while he was gone. Even though things had changed, the rule book said Aggie still had a right to reclaim his spot. So, by the book, he stepped back in as king, and Gizmo became his second in command, at least on paper. But in reality, the streets were still listening to Gizmo. The young members didn't care about old titles. They followed the one who looked out for them. And that wasn't Aggie. Aggie felt the disrespect building. He couldn't move how he used to. His orders weren't being followed. His words didn't hold weight like they once did. He saw his old throne slipping away, and that didn't sit right. So he did what leaders do when they feel the walls closing in. He called a meeting. November 1st, 1995, around 6 p.m., about 15 members pulled up to Aggie's house on West 24th. They sat around the dining table to air everything out. Aggie wanted answers.
Yo, these videos he's showing, man, is crazy.
What was causing the split? At first, things were calm. But then, a member broke the silence. He said what a lot of them had been feeling, that Aggie was spending gang money on things they didn't back. Specifically, he was sliding on the Latin kings, bringing heat for no reason instead of helping out his own people. Aggie tried to brush it off, but the dude wasn't done. He stood up and made it clear. If Aggie didn't get his act together, they'd vote him out. And they'd bring back King Gizmo.
Ooh, he playing like
that moment changed everything. The room went dead silent. No one said a word. Aggie didn't yell, didn't argue. He just nodded, ended the meeting, and sent everybody home. But inside, he was heated. He couldn't let it go, couldn't let them pick Gizmo over him. So later that night, at 9:41 p.m., Aggie made a call. He rang up Gizmo and told him to come back to the house. Said they needed to talk, clear the air. Gizmo didn't think twice. They had history. He trusted him. 10 p.m., Gizmo pulled up to the house. He came in through the side entrance like always. But this time something felt off. As he stepped inside, he saw two men waiting. And before he could even react, shots fired. The Pilsen community was left in shock. Gizmo wasn't just another gang member. He had kept things from falling apart. He earned respect, even from rivals. People couldn't believe what happened. The rumors started flying, but one question was louder than the rest. Did King Aggie really do it? At first, nobody wanted to believe it. It was too wild, too dirty. But something didn't sit right. Then came the biggest red flag. The next morning, King Aggie took a flight to Dallas, Texas. Just like that, he vanished. He stayed with some extended family and laid low. But because the shooting went down on his property, police already had him as suspect number one. Still, finding him wasn't easy, but they did catch someone else. Vicious Trejo, Aggie's right-hand man. Forensics and witness statements pinned him to the scene.
Damn, bro.
This game.
That's how they handle business, man.
You're not
Take
ready
him
for.
out. It's crazy.
In court, he got 30 years for his role in the hit. Meanwhile, King Aggie was still missing until May 1996, when the FBI finally tracked him down in Dallas. When King Aggie got located in Dallas in May 1996, it set off one of the biggest trials in Chicago gang history. By this time, he had built a reputation that went beyond the streets. He was infamous. The media, the cops, and even his own people thought the case was a slam dunk. Everyone expected him to go down hard, but the trial took a strange turn. One of the most important witnesses, Aggie's own neighbor, suddenly changed her story. She had originally said she saw something that pointed straight to Aggie, but in court, she took it all back. Why she changed her mind, no one knows for sure, but it worked. With that statement gone, the case fell apart. And just like that, King Aggie walked out a free man. You'd think after all that, he'd lay low, but nah. Aggie thought he could just walk back into Chicago and take the throne like it was still 1983. He really thought he was untouchable. But when he came back, the streets made it clear. Nobody wanted him around. The love, the fear, the power, it was all gone. After Gizmo's death, things had already been falling apart, and Aggie showing his face again only made it worse. People say he was never seen again in Chicago.
Man, the streets know what's
He
up,
didn't
bro.
get pushed out by
Streets ain't
rivals.
stupid.
He was rejected by his own. With Gizmo gone, the heart of the gang was ripped out. Structure, gone. Discipline, out the window. The SDs turned into a mess. Members stopped following any kind of code. They stopped moving as one. Instead, they started turning on each other. And by the time 1999 hit, the Satan Disciples weren't one solid crew anymore. They were spread across the city with different cliques doing their own thing. One of those spots was on the west side in Garfield Park. That's where a feared member named Teodoro Baez ran things. He was known on the streets as Mandingo, and if you knew Mandingo, you knew he wasn't the type to play around. He had a short temper, a serious reputation, and a heavy hand. His right-hand man was Juan Estrada, a guy who was just as serious about the game. The two were close, got money together, and moved like a unit. But even the tightest alliances can snap. In early August '99, things started getting shaky. Juan had grown frustrated with Mandingo over a $1,000 debt that still hadn't been paid. That debt created tension.
How much?
$1,000. Things started getting shaky. Juan had grown frustrated with Mandingo over a $1,000 debt that still hadn't been paid.
$1,000, huh?
That debt created tension. Street loyalty starts to fade quick when money's on the line. Then came August 5th, 1999.
That's still to this day, too.
It was a hot summer morning. Juan decided it was time to confront the issue head on. He called up Mandingo and told him they needed to talk. Mandingo didn't hesitate, told him to pull up to his apartment. Juan told his girlfriend Janet to drive him there. They showed up around 11 a.m. Juan stepped out of the car and headed up to the apartment. At first, the conversation was chill. They sat down, tried to talk it out. But Mandingo kept changing the subject. Juan wasn't having it. He kept pushing, trying to get answers. Then the mood shifted. Juan stood up, frustrated, and started calling Mandingo names, crossing lines that even in gang life you don't always cross. That's when things snapped. Mandingo, already on edge, saw red. This wasn't just some random guy. It was his own right-hand man. But in the heat of the moment, that didn't matter. He pulled out the blicky and shot Juan in the leg. Juan started screaming. It could have ended there, but Mandingo took it even further. He grabbed a samurai sword. After that,
sword.
There was no turning back. Then, Mandingo remembered, Juan didn't come alone. His girlfriend Janet was still waiting in the car. Calm as ever, he went downstairs and told her to come up. She didn't suspect a thing. She followed. That would be her last mistake. 3 days later, the bodies of Juan and Janet were found in the Chicago River. The scene left everyone stunned. Police pulled their phone records and saw that Teodoro Baez had been Juan's last call. That led them straight to him. On August 27, 1999, he was brought in for questioning. Now Mandingo could have kept quiet. The cops didn't have much on him, no solid evidence. But instead of playing it smart, he confessed, told them everything. He said, "At first I tried to negotiate with him, and then, when I felt negotiation was not possible, I reacted." Just like that, he sealed his fate. His confession spread fast and made national headlines.
That's where you gotta
Streets
keep
were
your mouth
stunned.
shut,
Even
man.
other SD members were shocked.
At all times,
This
for
wasn't
whatever
just
reason.
murder, it was
Because
betrayal.
you never know what they have on you, bro.
The kind that broke every rule of the Brotherhood. The backlash inside the gang was intense. Members were furious. They couldn't believe one of their own had crossed the line like that. Mandingo knew what kind of heat he was facing. After only 2 weeks in jail, he started sending letters to the judge. He begged to be placed in protective custody, scared of what the other inmates, and maybe even his own brothers, might do to him. At first, the judge said no, but after 3 more letters, they gave in. Mandingo was granted PC status for the rest of his time, and some more letters that brothers might do to him.
Damn.
At first, the judge said no, but after
got all them cheeks out there, bro. Shit, that's what I be looking. I be looking at the cheeks, baby.
and maybe even his own brothers might do to him. At first, the judge said no,
Cheeks everywhere.
but after 3 more letters, they gave in. Mandingo was granted PC status for the rest of his time inside.
Mandingo, go get some Mandingo in there.
Was done. The district attorney went all in. They pushed for the maximum sentence, and in the end, Teodoro Baez was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Even today, many SD members blame these kinds of moments on King Aggie. They say he destroyed the structure, created a gang where anything
is he
went.
still
Made it
alive?
okay for members to cross out their own.
King Aggie's still alive,
What started as a brotherhood with rules that turned into something else entirely. Once you start killing your own, the gang's not a brotherhood anymore. It's just a name. And from here on out, that name got bloodier by the day. By the early 2000s, the Satan disciples were almost unrecognizable. Whatever loyalty or structure once held them together had been replaced with straight-up greed. The gang that used to run like a family was now full of members chasing money over morals. And leading this new chapter was a young and hungry figure named Tommy Parra, known in the streets as Tommy Guns. Tommy wasn't like the leaders who came before him. He didn't care much about loyalty, codes, or the original vision the older heads had built. Tommy was focused on one thing, money, and he was ready to bend or break any rule to get it. Soon after stepping up, he crossed a major line in SD history. He started doing business with the Gangster Disciples, specifically a set from Rockwell Gardens, a spot far from SD tradition. This was something older members never would have allowed. SD money was supposed to stay within SD walls. That was how things had always worked. But Tommy didn't see it that way. He had his own motto: teamwork makes the dream work. And just like that, he tossed the rule book out the window and began collaborating with one of the most powerful gangs in the city.
There's so much money out in the
By
world.
2001, Tommy and his closest associates had made more money in 12 months than any other member in the gang's entire history. He was stacking fast. On paper, it looked like a win, but behind the scenes, the streets were watching. And not just the streets, the cops were watching too. In 2002, Chicago police launched a full investigation into the GDs in Rockwell Gardens. While keeping tabs on the crew, they kept spotting one face that didn't seem to belong. A dude who didn't dress like the rest, didn't move like them, but always showed up. That man was Tommy Guns. Once they realized he wasn't GD, they shifted the entire focus of the investigation. Tommy was now the target. Cops began tracking his every move. They followed his routes, tapped into his circles.
Put him in the radar.
Even worse, they got help from SD informants, people from within his own gang feeding the police information. Within just a month, it all came crashing down. Tommy and two of his closest boys were arrested, but the story wasn't done. Once police got their hands on Tommy, they found something else. Something that rocked both the gang world and the law enforcement side. Tommy's father was a captain in the Chicago Police Department. That was a jaw-dropper. For a gang that prided itself on never trusting the police, having a leader with a cop for a father was beyond scandalous. It was betrayal in its purest form.
That should be a hookup.
While the cops chose not to dig deeper into the father's involvement, it didn't stop Tommy from going down. The court handed him a 25-year sentence, and keep in mind, he didn't even hurt anyone. No body, no gunplay, just money, business, and broken rules.
Damn.
Still, the time was heavy, and for the gang, the message was clear. Another leader had fallen, and once again, it was their own doing. Aggie had destroyed the structure. Tommy had sold out for cash. And the rest of the gang, they were left wondering what rules even mattered anymore. When the top guys can't stay solid, how can the rest of the crew? That's when the decision-making inside the gang hit a new low. September 6, 2010, a Sunday afternoon in Little Village on 24th and Washtenaw, one of the last strongholds still claimed by the SDs. On that day, an SD member named Luis Fadden was chilling on the block when a car pulled up. Inside were two young women. They double-parked and sat there, chatting and laughing.
Right there. Women.
To Luis, something didn't sit right. He didn't know them. Didn't like how comfortable they looked. He grew suspicious. His first thought, they must be Latin kings, or at least connected to them. So he stepped up to the car, looked inside, and asked directly,
"On a warm day, you want two things.
Damn, he has on a warm day,
drink made with real fruit juice like simple."
"Y'all kings?" The women laughed. "Nah, we just girls," they said. "No disrespect, just a joke." But Luis didn't take it that way. He felt played. In his mind, they were mocking him. And that small moment, just a giggle and a comment, sparked something deadly. What happened next shook the entire neighborhood. It made headlines. It made people angry. But what made it worse was that Luis wasn't arrested for another 3 years. While the community tried to make sense of the violence, Luis kept walking free, and many inside the gang began to lose faith. One of those people was a well-respected OG, Robert Vela, also known as Bobby D. He was one of the original soldiers from the 24th block, a name people respected. Bobby had stepped away from the gang life, moved to Midlothian, and focused on raising his family. But when he heard about what Luis had done, something inside him snapped. This wasn't what they fought for. This wasn't SD. So he made a choice to come back and set things straight. October 30th,
I guess women do like the street life too, huh?
Around 7 p.m., Bobby returned to the block where it all started. He posted up with a few younger members, talked with them, tried to understand what the new generation was thinking. He wanted to guide them, maybe even clean up the mess they were standing in. But as Bobby talked, someone else was watching. From behind the buildings, in the dark, a figure moved, quiet, calm, waiting for the moment. As Bobby kept talking, the man came up behind him and made his move. Just like that, Bobby D was gone. This moment exploded across the SD world, a legend, gunned down, not by enemies, but possibly by someone from his own set. At first, the cops thought this had to be a retaliation hit from the Latin Kings for the September incident. That would have made sense, but when police spoke to LK members, they were surprised. The Kings denied it. And they were telling the truth. So the investigation turned inward. The real question wasn't about rival gangs anymore. It was about betrayal. And sure enough, informants stepped forward and told police the truth. The hit came from inside. A member from the same 24th block. Someone Bobby might have known. Someone who stood on the same corners. Someone who had called him a brother. Because the case was sealed, the shooter's name was never revealed. But for those who lived through it, for those who knew how the gang used to be, it didn't matter. Everyone already knew what happened. Because when the OGs start falling at the hands of their own people, the message is clear. The code is dead. And once the code dies, the gang ain't a family anymore. It's just a name, one soaked in its own blood. By 2012, the streets of Chicago had already witnessed the collapse of the old Satan Disciples Code. Loyalty meant less, money meant more, and wild behavior wasn't punished, it was expected. One name that stood out in this era of reckless moves was Luis Fadden. He was the same SD member tied to a shocking act from 2010, and yet 2 years later, he was still out, still armed, and still moving like he couldn't be touched. February 18th, 2012. Luis was riding around Latin King territory looking for trouble. It was a regular afternoon, 4 p.m. on California Avenue, when he spotted a car driving the opposite way. Inside, a group of known Latin Kings. Without hesitation, Luis whipped a U-turn and started speeding after them. He pulled up fast and blocked their car so they couldn't escape. Then, as if this was just another day in the life, he rolled down his window and let loose. That moment, caught on surveillance cameras, sealed his fate. The police moved in quick. When they recovered his weapon, they didn't just have evidence for the shooting. They also linked that same gun back to the September 6th.
Why would you keep that same pistol you used, man, for something else, bro?
That was it for Luis.
You gotta get rid of that shit.
After a long court process,
use that
he
shit
got
one
life
time,
in prison without parole. He wouldn't be walking the streets again. But by this point, the damage was already done. Incidents like that didn't just deepen the rivalry with the Latin Kings. They reshaped it. The hate between the two gangs had grown over decades, but now there was more blood on both sides than ever before. However, the Kings weren't the only enemies the SDs had to worry about. Another name came up often when it came to the list of beefs: 2-6, a gang that came out of 26th Street in Little Village. The hatred between the Satan Disciples and 2-6 had been cooking since the 1980s, and it wasn't over colors or words. It was all about turf. Who owned what block, who had more pull, and who was calling the shots in Little Village. Fast forward to August 2015, and this long-standing rivalry would spark again, but in a way that no one saw coming. At that time, some SD members were actually working legal jobs, something the older generation used to encourage. Two members, Carlos Cregan from Whiting, Indiana, and Jonathan Rodriguez from Calumet, Illinois, had gigs as security workers for a towing company. Basically, their job was to sit on standby and protect the repo drivers when needed. Until then, they were free to chill. On August 22nd, 2015, they were stationed in the Clearing neighborhood on the south side. Nothing was happening, so they got bored and decided to drive out to a bar on West 63rd Street. That's where they ran into a guy named Leonardo Morales. The three of them talked, laughed, and hung out until the bar closed at 2 a.m. Right after leaving the bar, Carlos and Jonathan got a call from their dispatcher. A repo driver needed backup. They jumped into their truck and invited Leonardo to tag along. It seemed casual, just a late-night ride with some new friends. They handled the repo job without a problem, no drama. But afterward, Leonardo asked if they could drop him off at home. The SD members agreed and told him to hop in. That's when the vibe started to shift. As they drove, Leonardo opened up a bit. He told them he used to run with 2-6 but had left that life behind.
Shit.
To him, it was just old news. But to Carlos and Jonathan, two full SD members, that was all they needed to hear. They glanced at each other from the front seats, didn't say a word, just nodded. That silent moment said it all. They changed course and drove into a nearby alley. Leonardo got suspicious and asked if something was wrong. The members played it off, said they were just tired and needed a quick smoke break. They invited him to join. He stepped out of the car. That's when it went left. Moments later, Carlos and Jonathan jumped back into the truck and took off, leaving Leonardo behind. What they didn't know was that a neighbor above the alley saw the whole thing go down. The witness was the reason their freedom ended fast. Within days,
you gonna lose your whole life for stupid shit like that,
Cook
man.
County
That shit's
jail.
fucking crazy,
The
bro.
streets talked fast.
Damn.
This wasn't a hit on an enemy in a shootout.
So
This
quick
was
to lose
something
your
else.
life.
Cold, planned, carried out by men who had spent the whole night laughing with their target. And it wasn't the end of the madness. The Satan disciples weren't just clashing with the Kings and 2-6 anymore. Another gang had quietly become a serious problem. The Almighty Saints. They were deep in the back of the Yards neighborhood and had always been a local force. But by
Chicago got so many damn
their
gangs,
name
bro.
was
It's not
coming
even
up
funny,
way
man.
more often.
They
The
got
SDs
so many
had seen them as
sections.
rivals before, but now
Popping up left
they
and
were
right.
becoming priority. Some called them the fourth enemy. That changed quickly, because in 2016, one move from the SDs changed the entire balance. That single act pushed the Almighty Saints up the list from 4th to number 1. And just like that, another war was set to begin. It was the day after Christmas, December 26, 2016. And while most people were enjoying leftovers or relaxing with family, Chicago's South Side was anything but peaceful. Snow covered the streets, and the cold kept most people indoors. But in back of the Yards, a neighborhood deep in Almighty Saints territory, known on the streets as Halo City, one man was just trying to enjoy a quiet walk. Jamil al-Shabi had been visiting family in the area. Around 5:45 p.m., he was out walking his dogs near Davis Park, unaware that the area he was in had become a ticking time bomb. Just across the tracks, the Satan disciples held turf known as No Love City, a name that proved fitting that day. An SD member named Hector Aguirre was cruising through Halo City on the hunt for anyone who might look like a rival. He couldn't find a single soul until he pulled up near the park and spotted Jamil. Hector didn't hesitate. He saw a man in the wrong area and assumed he was a saint. That was all it took. He jumped out of his car and ran straight into the park. The heartbreaking truth? Jamil had nothing to do with the Almighty Saints. He wasn't affiliated with any gang. He was just a regular man in the wrong place at the worst possible time. But for the Saints, it didn't matter that Jamil wasn't one of theirs. What mattered was that he was taken out in their territory by a Satan disciple for no reason. That one move set off a chain reaction that turned the streets into a war zone. The Saints weren't letting it slide. Over the next year, they retaliated with full force, going after the SDs in a way the city hadn't seen before. The beef had always been bubbling, but this time it boiled over. In 2017, 3 well-known SD members, Lazy D, Grizzly D, and Smokey D, were all lost in separate incidents, all high-ranking, all connected. The violence wasn't just about defending turf anymore. It became personal. Saints hit the SDs back harder than ever. and in return, the SDs tried to match the same level of heat. The streets were burning on both ends. Some compared it to the infamous
With Ashley's next-gen Nuvella Performance fabric, you can relax.
O Block versus 63rd Street war. But insiders said this beef was even more ruthless. These weren't warning shots or back and forths. These were targeted, cold moves that left bodies behind and neighborhoods in fear, and it didn't stop in the streets. By 2020, the rivalry between the Saints and the Satan disciples had found its way behind the walls of Cook County Jail. On February 1st, 2020, an SD member named Christian Gonzalez was arrested and booked. At first, it seemed like a regular intake. He got processed, searched, and assigned a random cell. But when the guards brought him to his unit, something went wrong. He walked in and immediately locked eyes with the man on the bunk. That man, a known Saints member named Pedro Ruiz. Inside the jail system, rival gang members should never be placed in the same cell. It's an unspoken rule, everyone knows that. But somehow, Christian and Pedro ended up face to face, locked in with nowhere to go. There's no official record of what happened next, no full report of how it all went down. But by the next morning, Pedro Ruiz was found in that same cell, gone. And Christian, he didn't have a knife, he didn't have a shank, all he had was a bar of soap. What exactly went down behind those locked doors still isn't fully known, but the result spoke for itself. Pedro didn't make it out. Cook County Jail came under fire for the mistake. People questioned how two enemies ended up in the same space. But for those from Chicago, this wasn't shocking. It was just another example of how things can go wrong fast when you mix bad decisions with a broken system. The streets were already a battlefield, but now the jail was too. Still, with all the war, all the deaths, and all the revenge, the SDs kept a low media profile. Unlike other gangs constantly in the headlines, the Satan disciples rarely made national news, but that didn't mean they weren't active. Starting around 2018, a small section of SDs located between 50th and 51st started gaining attention, but not for violence. This time, it was for music. A rapper named 050 Shooter came out of that area. Known for his bars and aggressive delivery, Shooter brought a different kind of energy to the gang's image. Alongside him was another rapper, Lily, who sadly lost his life to the Latin Kings. While their music gained traction, their enemies were never far behind. 050 Shooter became known for going live on Instagram, dissing rival sets and speaking openly about the streets. He talked reckless, he talked real, and that made him stand out. Not just as an artist, but as another face of a gang that had already proven it didn't play fair. The SDs had become what some call true EBK, everybody killer. It wasn't just the Kings or 2-6 or Saints. The SDs moved like no one was safe. Loyalty meant less and survival meant everything. They didn't just beef with rivals, they turned on each other, and they didn't want attention, they wanted dominance. And anyone who stepped wrong, even by mistake, paid the price. The story of the Satan disciples shows how a gang that once stood for unity and protection fell apart from the inside out. Over time, loyalty was replaced with greed, and structure gave way to chaos. From turning on their own leaders to sparking deadly wars across Chicago, the SDs became a crew with no boundaries, true EBK. Their history is packed with betrayal, violence, and pain. And even now, the cycle continues. As the streets keep changing, one thing is clear. This gang's darkest chapters might not be behind them. Do you think the Satan disciples can ever return to their original code?
Hell no.
Which rival gang do you think changed the SDs the most? Latin Kings, 2-6, or the Almighty Saints? Let us know what you think in the comments box below. And if you liked how we presented you this video, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe for more.
Hell no, they ain't never gonna get back to their old roots, man. Every generation gets different, every generation gets rawer, every generation gets worse, man. If they ain't followed the code back then, they definitely ain't gonna follow the code now. Money is the game, bro. They could switch on their own people, backdooring each other. As long as they get money out of it, they don't give a damn, bro. People killing, getting murdered for nothing, just for wrong area, getting lost. You know what I'm saying? Walking your dog. It's not even safe, man. But there y'all go, man. Satan disciples. the true EBK of Chicago, man. Hit the comment sections. What should I get to next? I like doing stuff like this because, you know, I mean, a lot of people don't know anything about Chicago's underworld. Not just Chicago. Every state has its own little section that nobody knows because it's not mainstream. You know what I'm saying? It's all in-house. But if you guys know some shit, get at me, man, and I'll get on here and I'll react to it. Like I said, I like watching these, bro, because it gives us a new view of what's out there that we haven't seen before. We all seen the Californias, the old blocks, and all that, but stuff like this it's like, what? Damn, they got it like that? This that bad over there? Shit. But yeah, hope y'all enjoyed this. Thumbs up, subscribe. Let's get to 1K. This is my backup channel to get to 1K. I'm gonna be doing more reactions now because I got more time. But man, yeah, let your boy know what's good, man. Hit the comment sections up, alright? Until then, EsseHomie. I'm out. Peace. Don't think about leaving without hitting the subscribe button.